Training camp starts this week as we inch closer to having real football back in our lives. That means the Seahawks are back on the field as they enter a new era. Award-winning beat reporter Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic joins us to answer some of the biggest questions heading into the 2024 season. Let's light them up.
I'm Jacson Bevins, and this is Cigar Thoughts.
Welcome back to the Cigar Lounge. I am Jacson Bevins, and along with my capricious producer, Mike Barwin, this is the Cigar Thoughts podcast. Mike, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, Jackson. We are inching closer and closer to training camp, which means real football in front of our eyes. We've got people with boots on the ground at the VMAC that are going to be coming in quite often to provide us real in-person updates. So it's just getting more and more tangible, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Yeah, super exciting time of year is where we really start to dig our feet in and start sprinting towards the season. And, you know, we're doing a little Monday episode because I fell ass backwards into a trip to Bandon Dunes this week. So I'm going to be at Gulf Mecca for the next few days. And
yeah, that sounds like shit.
Yeah.
Sounds
Going to
awful.
be real terrible. Going to be playing all those world-class courses and hanging out in the bunker bar, the cigar lounge. It's going to be terrible, man. I'm going to need you to pray for me so I can get through this.
No, I'm manifesting, something a little better than that sounds like for you, hopefully your swing can correspond to better times ahead.
I'm going to need it, man. It's a big 24-man Ryder Cup style tournament.
Oh,
12,
shit. Okay.
12 golfers from Washington versus 12 from Oregon. So, yeah, it's
you better hold it down. You better hold it down for the homeland.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, a lot of pressure heading into it. But you know what? Game's feeling pretty good. I got a couple of good rounds in recently as a tune-up. So I hope it transfers. And look, man, as far as football goes, we're going to talk ball with one of our favorites today. But before we do, I want to remind everyone listening that Cigar Thoughts is proud to be sponsored by Seattle Cigar Concierge and Belveni Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, two companies of incredible quality. And the big news for those of you who are just getting back into it with us here on Cigar Thoughts, we have teamed back up with Seattle Cigar Concierge for an exciting second release of the Cigar Thoughts cigars. It's the Cigar Thoughts Red Zone series, which combines a robust taste profile with a smooth Connecticut wrapper and will be available to purchase using the link on the show page for the same discounted price of $149 for a bundle of 10 stogies that you've gotten used to with the Cigar Thoughts Originals. My goal with these releases is to provide an avenue to high-end cigars without the high-end cost, and this partnership provides exactly that. The feedback on these stogies has been excellent so far, and we'd love yours as well. They also make a great gift, so get some for yourself or for someone else by following the link at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Mike, look, man, you know how much I like talking football with you, but it doesn't come close to the excitement I get about chopping it up with today's guest. Y'all listening likely know his work covering the Seahawks for The Athletic, which helped earn him the National Sports Media Association's award as the best young reporter in 2021, and as the co-host of the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast. He is Michael Sean Dugar, or as he's known in the Cigar Lounge, Good Mike. Mike, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing good. Love that intro. Appreciate that, man. Glad to be back. Love being on with you guys.
Yeah, man. Well, we love it too. And look, man, I know this has been a crazy year. We were talking before we hopped on the air. Off season's supposed to be for rest, but you got a newborn, you got some projects going on, and now you're ramping up for the season. How you holding up, man?
My parents got me a Keurig for Christmas. Best gift they've given me, other than life, 32 years ago. So that's holding me down. But also, I feel like I'm one of the few beat writers, at least of my age. I know some of the older guys like camp, the grind of camp, but I think for guys like around my age, again, I'm 32. They want to see the games. Like some of this stuff doesn't matter till the pads come on or you actually play another team. Me, I like the grind of camp.
Yeah.
In part because it is the time that like I am the authority. And I say I, just like the people who are on the ground. You're the authority. And you could have all the connects you want, but even like, for example, like someone like Peter King, like knows everyone. His phone book probably looks crazy, but you know what he does? He goes to the camps because you gotta be there. to really be the authority, to talk to the people. So I do like that part of it, and it ain't just like the fans that were the authority for it too. Like I've run into like scouts and stuff from other teams at the combine, and I'll introduce myself, and they'll be like, oh, Seahawks, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, how'd you know? It's like, yeah, I gotta follow you in the preseason or whatever,
Right.
Because the reason they know that a Casey Williams is killing it is because our tweets half the time, until the preseason game starts, or a Keenan Reynolds or whoever, those bottom of the roster guys, when they're looking for who to poach from the Seahawks. I don't know, ain't no film. It's our tweets that are saying that player X is killing it, So I like that part of it. I mean, I guess that's kind of arrogant on my part for a reason to like it, but something's got to get me there every day, right?
Nah, man, that's not arrogant at all. I mean, the goal is to have an accurate understanding of where you're at and what you're doing. And like, I completely agree with all of that, because when the games start, we're all working with the same source information, right? Like, we all saw the game, we all watched it, we saw all the plays, and we all have our own opinions. And so like, y'all's voice is so crucial because it is connected and balanced and all of that. But during training camp, we're not really seeing that. And we really are relying on the work that you and the other fellows on the beat are doing to keep us in the mix. And this is like the time of year. I mean, training camp starts this week. This is where we actually start to get some actionable information about this team, instead of just projecting, what this free agent signing is going to look like or whatever. And so, yeah, man, I think that's a completely accurate way of describing this time of year. And, Seahawks fans know this already, but we're so grateful to have the guys that we do covering this team. And, we really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, man, I just, my value's high right now. This is the time. Yep. I like it. This is also when we're the closest to the action. When we're in the booth, during the games. Yeah, we got a good vantage point, but it's just so different, man. To be right there when DK runs by you on a go route, it's like, oh man,
right?
That's why receiver. Right. I love everybody else. I respect it, but it's a different animal. I'd say this every year. I judge all the corners based on how you guard 14. If you can guard 14, you'll be all right in this league. Because that dude, he just tests you in so many ways, and ain't just because he can run straight. He can do a little bit of everything. And if he burns you, he's gonna let you know. He's gonna tell you suck. He's gonna cuss at you, scream that you can't guard him, and he's gonna do it again. And he'll bring that at you. I love that, and love seeing the guys who are up for that challenge. Like, it was much respect to Trey Flowers too. He wasn't physically up for that challenge quite a bit, but boy, he never backed down. Like, DK, like, you suck, you can't guard me, with a lot more profanity than I'm using currently. And Trey would just be like, man, what's up? Line it up again. Let's do it. Like, I always respect Trey for that. Like, when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, he was on that team. I really was happy for him. I know they didn't win, but like, because he was one of those dudes I learned he ain't got no back down. And I love learning who has no back down in them, whether you're a good player or not, whether you're a Jermaine Ifedi or a DK. Jermaine had no back down. Mike B would try him every freaking day. And he was like, I don't care. What's up? Line it up. Let's do it. I love seeing who those guys are in the summer.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the guys who practice like it's Sunday, because I think you do see a pretty big range of how different players approach it. It's not to say that like those who maybe take a little bit different approach in practice, like that's a lesser than approach. But as someone who's like loves the game, it is cool to see the people who show up Monday through Saturday like it's already Sunday.
Yeah, and a perfect contrast is Tyler Lockett. Tyler is very easygoing at practice. I mean, he is in the games too, but he's just super easygoing, kind of off to the side doing his own thing, not really dancing, not super like demonstrative. He's just like, I'm just out here cooking, guys. That's just what I do. No arguing back and forth, not a lot of celebrating. And then on Sunday, he's a killer. He is. Yep. Whereas like DK is like, dude, I'm telling all you guys you suck. Coaches too. If I feel like you
that's what they're going to get. That's what they're going to get on Sundays. So, you got to know how you're going to react to that. And look, man, last week we took more of a detailed look at the offseason so far. So today I want to switch our gaze forward. And Mike, you've been covering this team long enough to have a keen sense of things in that building. When you look at the transition that this team is undergoing, what are the biggest questions you have moving forward?
Oh, it's all about coaching for me. I mean, because that's what the change is. They changed some names on the roster, but by and large, John Snyder got up there and said, our coaches are not good enough. I'm going to get new ones. That's basically what he said. I rewatched that press conference a couple weeks ago, and it was long. He said a lot of words. That was the gist. It's like, our coaches wasn't good enough. I'm going to get new ones. And he did. He went out and got new ones. And if you look at how the roster is constructed, he's basically asking the coaching staff to be better, like, immediately. He's asking Mike Macdonald to be better than Pete was immediately. He's asking his OC and his DC to just kill it right off the bat, which is fine. I mean, that's what you want. That's why you hire these guys. But that's a lot to ask, because it's not like he's not replacing, a Ben McAdoo staff in New York or something like that, or a Rex Ryan staff in New York, or any.
Yeah, this isn't a Jim Mora 1 year tenure.
Yeah, he's not Pete wasn't a scrub, and his guys weren't scrubs, and even John would probably acknowledge that the whole top to bottom coaching staff was not just full of scrubs, right? That guys that didn't know X's and O's. So I think the bar is higher than a normal staff taking over. You know what I mean? Like, it's, like you said, it's different than taking over that Jim Mora team. The three of us probably could have cooked up something that was better than that Jim Mora staff. In 2010, if you gave us enough resources. Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, being immediately better than Pete Carroll when you've never done the job, that is tough. That's a tough test, and I think Gerard Mayo is going to go through something very similar. And that team was worse. The 2023 Patriots were worse than the 2023 Seahawks. So I think Gerard even has a tougher task. But I think the tasks are similar in that, like, you're asking these young dudes who've never done this current job to be better than guys who are like arguably the best ever at it. Right away. In the NFL, every game feels like the biggest game in the world. So you lose week 1, you suck. You win week 2. Oh, we got it. We're going to the bowl. It's just this emotional roller coaster. So that's the big one for me, particularly with the guys calling the plays on both sides. So Mike Macdonald and Grubb. There is a lot of talent on both sides, but can you consistently outcoach the other guys, situationally in particular? That's where I really think coaching shines. Like, third down on both ends, and then red zone. And you look at their numbers on all 4 of those categories: offense, defense, and then red zone and third down for both. Oh my God, it was awful. It was awful. It's surprising they even went 9-8 with those numbers. They were like one of the worst third down teams on both sides. They were bottom third red zone on both sides, I want to say. That was just, you just can't succeed like that. And for me, that's a lot to do with coaching, getting the ball to your best players on offense and getting your best players around the ball on defense. That's like the main goal in both of those situations, because that's how points are scored or allowed, depending on the side you're looking at. So I think the most important, the biggest variable is how do Grubb and Mike Macdonald in particular like handle their sides of the ball situationally and put their guys in position either be around the ball on defense or put the ball in their hands on offense.
You talked about how bad they were on third down offense to defense, how bad they were in the red zone offense to defense. These are the highest leverage situations in football, and yet still 9-8 each of the last 2 seasons. And it speaks to that unquantifiable aspect of football that can be tough for those of us who cover the game and who watch it as fans, is because we can't put a lot of this stuff you can't put vibes in a box score, right? There's not a metric for that. And Pete Carroll's whole deal has been vibes. Like, what he appears to have lacked in maybe attention to detail and some of the fundamental stuff about football was made up for more than with vibes, which is how a team that struggles in those high leverage categories can still go 9-8. One of the big questions for me is the perceived increase in attention to detail and doing the basics of the job better enough to overcome what you're losing from a vibe standpoint, if they are losing anything from a vibe standpoint at all with Mike Macdonald and his staff. It'll certainly be different. And looking at the defense, you mentioned, Macdonald is essentially the defensive coordinator here. And my opinion so far with their approach to the defensive roster, and you can tell me if you feel this is accurate, and certainly tell me if you don't, but it really feels like this is an audition year for the future of Mike Macdonald's offense, because outside of Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, pretty much everybody is on a 1-year contract, or the team can get out after next year. So it feels to me like a lot of the guys on this defense and obviously, their first round pick, Byron Murphy, is going to be here for the next few years at the least. It feels like everybody else is trying out for their future with Mike Macdonald.
Yeah, I think Reek probably is, someone who's generally safe, I would say, unless he just completely flops this year. But I don't think he will. I think the knee injury thing was more of a hindrance than perhaps some of us gave it credit for. I know myself. I thought he'd just be able to thug that out. But guys are dealing with stuff. And I don't know how much you guys have seen or talked about the receiver series on Netflix, but it puts in perspective what these guys got to go through to be out there. Like Amon-Ra is probably one of the toughest dudes in football, and even he's like, dude, I'm getting down because my oblique is off the bone. Like I'm hurting. Like
Crazy.
that's and he was out there still balling off the bone. They pulled some voodoo on George Kittle's shoulder. It was so bad they couldn't even show it. Just to get him back out there. So I say that in the context of Reek is another guy who could easily ball out in this defense and be part of the core. He's under contract for a couple more years. So, but yeah, everyone else, you're on notice, man. Like as it should be, because it's not the end all be all. The ESPN poll that had all the coaches, executive, and scouts in there and ranked all the top 10 guys, but I do think it's notable. You only had one Seahawk in the top 10, and that was Spoon. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong per se, particularly if you're basing it off of last year. I don't think anyone on the team played like a top 10 guy last year definitively. You can make some arguments, but nothing was super definitive.
It didn't feel like there were obvious snubs on that list.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't an obvious snub. Like if you think DK could be in there, that's cool, but then you go look at the list and you're like, oh my God. There were guys balling at receiver last year, and I feel like we have to adjust for inflation with this 17th game. Like DK had 1,100 yards, and then you look and it's like, 1,100 is like the new 1,000 for real. Like it's not. That's good, but there are dudes going crazy out here.
Yeah, I think the ones that you're maybe considering making an argument for, Leonard Williams and DK and Ken Walker, I think are three guys that you could make an argument for the top 10. I think DK's issue has always been volume. I mean, I think if you extrapolate his production out to 150, 160 targets, the type of workload that the guys in the top 10 are all getting, then his numbers are going to be top 10. Absolutely. It's just Seattle's run fewer plays than any other team in the NFL over the last 4 years because, like you said, they're bad at third down on offense and bad at third down on defense. And that adds up to them having like 3 dudes in the top 10 of tackles every year on defense.
Every year, man. Right? Bobby, Jordan, Quandre, they're all at the top of like snaps played. I think Quandre might have played more snaps than anyone in the last like 3 or 4 years, and he broke his leg. He's still out there, balling. But yeah, I think I have some high hopes for McDonald on defense, in part because of what you mentioned about the fundamentals. And he just seems matter of fact, and I was talking to some other guys who cover beats around the league and just talking about how practices work. And it seems like Mike McDonald, like for example, Pete, when he did his meetings, was more like we wrote about this last year in The Athletic. It was wacky. Like he's in there showing cut-ups of funny stuff. He's in there showing like table tennis highlights from the Olympics and then mixing in like practice footage, whereas it seems like some of these newer guys do wonky stuff like that, but it's far more like there's a lot of teaching going on in there. Like, here's the why behind this situation for everybody, the whole team. Even if it's just like a simple outside zone run play, it's like, look, I don't care if you're one of our backup tight ends. I want you to know why this works. Or I don't care if you're our nose tackle, you want to be in on this play. Here's why this works the way it does. And I do think that's important because the other thing that goes into third down and red zone on both sides of the ball is the basics, and knowing the basics so well that you can adjust on the fly. I loved. I was rewatching a bunch of old Legion of Boom stuff this offseason, and one of the adjustments that stood out was the Gronk play where Earl ruptures his I think his spleen or his lung or something like that, and against the Patriots in 2016.
Gronk said that's the hardest he's ever been hit.
Yeah, and it looked like it. Jesus, that looks so painful. But what happened there was Cam and Sherm switched up the play. I think Sherm is supposed to carry that based on, the alignment and what the call was. But they were just like, you know what, forget it. You take that. I'll take whoever the receiver was that released inside, and then Cam take Gronk up the seam, and then it worked out to get one of the better plays in the Legion of Boom era. It was amazing, right? But they knew the fundamentals of the scheme and the basics of their assignments so well, and all of their rules. They knew how the Patriots were going to put them in conflict with those rules, and they were able to problem solve all in a matter of seconds in a high leverage situation, like on national TV, all that stuff. And I think you have to, if you're a new coach, it's nice to start with the basics. Like, I'm going to give you just all of the tools piece by piece so that if something breaks, if there's a leak somewhere, there's a hole, and you have whatever tool you need. Because I taught you how to use all of them. You have every tool, and I think that's important. Now, who knows if that actually ends up working? You still have to have guys who retain the information, can process, and all that stuff. But so far, what I know about Mike Macdonald's process, I think that kind of is the way to go about it, because a lot of football is adjusting on the fly, saying, "Look, we know what our rules are. We know these guys are about to break our rule doing X, Y, Z. So here's how we do ABC to make sure we get off the field or our offense stay on the field."
Yeah, and you actually touched on something that I think is so underrated and so overlooked in discourse about top tier athletes. We see the greats and it feels like they're freelancing out there. You look at Legion of Boom and you see all of these plays that just look like dudes who are completely in flow and in the moment, and they're doing things outside of the structure of the play. That's like what made that secondary and that defense so incredible, is that they had all of these highlights. Like, Seahawks fans been starving for defensive highlights for the better part of a decade now. But the reason they were able to do all of that is because their fundamentals were so dialed. And it's like, you watch highlights, compared to basketball, right? You watch LeBron or Steph or Dame or Anthony Edwards, these guys that are just showing out with these crazy plays. Well, they're only able to do that flow state stuff because they've got the details so dialed in. And it has just felt like, outside of a few members of the Seahawks defense, they haven't had that mastery of the fundamentals that allow you to then go out and work outside of structure. Because if you're working outside of structure without taking care of the basics, it ain't going to work. That's how you get out of position. That's how you get beat.
Yeah, and some of that is just time on task too. The guys who have become the best at it, they played a lot of snaps. Quandre was really good at that. Bobby's, I had a tweet a couple weeks ago where I asked about everyone's favorite Bobby Wagner memory. I think overwhelmingly it was the 98-yard pick six against the Niners in 2018. And even that play is a product of film study. Bobby, he knew the call because he made the call. He knew that they had ran it against them before, and I think they checked it down before because he played it too well and just left open the running back because there was nowhere else to go because he did it the right way. Boom, they run it again. He's like, all right, cool, now I got it. Now I can bait him into that check down. Now I'm taking this to the house, So Quandre had a few plays like that. I believe his second interception against the Raiders in 2022 is a product of film study. I think it's a play the Bucks beat him on in Germany the week before. So he was like, oh, I know this play. Beat it, Cody Barton tips it, and then he gets the interception. So I think that it does take some time, but when you get there, man, it just clicks. And some of that is just staying healthy. Too,
Yep.
You can't get those reps, by being on the sideline or in the training room, and some of that is you need guys with the instinct, but it's coming together, man. I think Reek is kind of like that too. He got beat on an over route against the Falcons in Week 3 his rookie year, and they ran something similar against the Lions the next week, and he got the pick six on Jared Goff, his rookie year. So it's there, but sometimes like I said, in some of these cases they had to get beat first and then get corrected. And so the goal I feel like for Mike Macdonald's defense is minimize the times you get beat, or minimize the times you get beat and it's a killer.
Right.
Everyone gets beat. The offense gets paid too, right? But can you get beaten and fix it in real time? Does it take you a week, or can you fix it on the next drive, so to speak? It's just going to be so much that this coaching staff is going to figure out on the fly, particularly for Mike Macdonald calling the defense, and you're the CEO. Guys are going to be talking to you about special teams and timeouts and challenges.
That's right.
It's you don't have time to really worry about your blitz package right this second.
Yeah.
You have to challenge a DK catch, right? You don't have that timeout to worry about all right, we're going to do this. We're going to fix our front on this early down. No, dude, did DK get his second toe down? We need you to decide right now.
Right.
Just little stuff like that he's going to have to figure out.
Well, I'm going to be super curious to see how he delegates, because Pete liked to do all that stuff himself. And I cannot imagine how overwhelming the stimulus is as a head coach. And with Mike Macdonald, when you're a position coach, he started his career, he was like the third down blitz specialist. That allows you to hyper focus on a thing. Mm-hmm. And then you become a linebackers coach, and then you become a college defensive coordinator, and then you become an NFL defensive coordinator, and your scope continually expands. And all of that, to me, is kind of within the same sphere. Now you're jumping spheres, right? You use the comparison that we always use when it comes to head coach. You are now the CEO of what would be a Fortune 500 company if it was publicly traded, right? Like, this is massive business on top of your in-game and in-practice responsibilities. So I'll be curious to see if he delegates. I mean, he comes from the Harbaugh tree, and John Harbaugh famously has a fourth down guy and a timeout guy and a review guy. Someone who's taken that stuff off their plate. Their job is to tell you, hey, timeout now, review now. Here's what the numbers say on fourth down, instead of, like we talked about with Pete, vibes, right? What are the vibes telling me?
Him and Tater were just vibing.
100%. Well, look, man, one of the things that we appreciate about you, and something that I think stands out about the Seahawks beat as a whole, because I don't just follow the Seahawks beat. I follow the beat reporters I try to do every team, but certainly, other teams in the division, the conference and whatnot. The Seahawks beat really does stand out from an objectivity standpoint. And I really appreciate that. And, I love your willingness to shoot straight in your assessments of the team. Bad Mike and I were looking through this roster and trying to grade out some of the various aspects of it. And we wanted to get your take on it as well. So we're going to run through the squad real quick, and I want you to grade their performance last year in each of these categories.
Okay.
All right. So
this is letter grades or 1 to 10 or what?
Let's do letter grades. All right. You're the professor. Professor Dugar is in the house. It's the end of the semester, and we're going to start back to front. Talk to me about the secondary. Grade their play in 2023.
Oh, I was average. I'd like a C. I think like at best. I think it was unfortunate. They just didn't. It was one of them disappointing C's. It'd be like that kid who is super smart, but he back there messing around because of the girl he like in the back of the class or something like that. Or he just trying to make jokes and everything. It's like, yo, man, you smarter than this. Like, I know you smarter than this. That's that type of grade for the secondary, because I just know they're better than that. Like, in particular, they're just so much better than like that Dallas game. It's like it's just getting fried, man. And it's not that, Dak and them didn't lose at home, I don't think, in the regular season. So the result,
number one offense in the NFL.
It's not the result wasn't the end of the world as much as it was like, guys, you cannot get off the field on third down at all. It was just, and it was like, I know you can. In particular, like Reek in that game had 2 pretty bad DPIs, if I remember right, and one of them, he don't even turn and look at the receiver. He just jumps in the air, still facing the receiver. He jumps early, because he didn't track the ball. And it's just like, Reek, it's
a flag every time.
It was like, Reek, we know you don't play the ball like that. You know you don't play the ball like that. It's like, if you're a coach, like, what do you even say on the sideline? Because I bet you I don't get to watch practice, but I'm pretty sure Reek has never played a ball like that in practice.
Yeah.
Where he jumps a half second early, doesn't turn around. He never does that, So it was plays like that where it was like that. It was more like, man, I'm disappointed in you guys. Like, this was pretty rough. That was pretty bad. I think they weren't like awful. They weren't 2020 first half of the season Seahawks secondary type of rough, or they're just giving up 400 yards to whoever at that point. But it was pretty just decidedly average. They made some good plays here and there. Reek had some picks. Julian Love had some big plays, particularly in that Monday Night Football game against the Eagles. But it just felt like we were watching an average unit that had the talent to be far better than average, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, man. So we got a C grade on the secondary. Let's move closer to the line of scrimmage. How'd the linebackers do?
I thought the linebackers were a little bit more. They were more decent, but I'd still probably say like a C plus ish maybe. I just can't. The run defense was just so hit and miss, so hot and cold for me to feel comfortable about it. And I also feel like they got put in some bad spots in coverage. I also think like that was not like a great situation for Bobby, and not even just like a third down thing. It was just like every little chance teams had to go at him, they just did.
Of course.
And it was rough. Like the first drive of the Thanksgiving game was just like Kyle Shanahan being like, I got 54 out there, huh? Okay, cool. Ball's there every snap. It walked it down the first drive. They didn't really do it after that, which was really just tells me that was a game plan thing. Like on the plane up, Kyle was like, if they put 54 out there, we're at them every snap, and they did it. And then just like, all right, after that, we'll score 30 another way. But for that snap, we're gonna do it. But they're very similar to the secondary, where it's like the bottom didn't fall out. Mm-hmm. They were fine. Bobby made a bunch of tackles. He was pretty productive. JB had some good plays in coverage, but they just didn't feel like they were in sync very well. Didn't feel like they were trusting the D-line, which we'll get to their grade maybe next. It was another like maybe a little better than average. I think JB and Bobby can play better though than they played last year. It can definitely be more productive, more splash plays. Though I think JB made a bunch, but it just didn't feel like we weren't getting the best version of him. Well, played better than he did in 2022, but he just wasn't the best version. The best version I think we could have got of him. Well,
and I feel like with the Pete Carroll, Clint Hurt, whomever defense over the last number of years, as teams have gotten more proficient with the passing game, Seattle's always put a lot of pressure on their off-ball linebackers in coverage. And it is something that you have seen for 5-6 years now. Both Shanahan and Sean McVay have just targeted that. I mean, if you have a quarterback that is capable and willing to throw over the middle of the field, those sail route. I mean, teams just sail routed the Seahawks to death on third down last year, where you just bring a receiver from the outside and you just cruise him over the middle deep, right? In that 15 to 20 yard range. You are asking so much from a linebacker, especially if that's coming off of play action, where you're trying to get their first step forward. And now they need to turn their backs and sprint, pick up a receiver, identify his route, and then carry him as they sail across the field. I mean, teams just dice Seattle up with that. And that's not something you saw a lot of with Baltimore's defense with Mike Macdonald. Is he wasn't asking his off-ball linebackers very often to turn and run with slot receivers across the middle of the field. It was more about drops, keep your eyes in the backfield type of thing. I'm very curious about that because, the changes they made at linebacker, at least you could count on Bobby Wagner. He's going to know 100% what needs to happen on every single play. Jordan Brooks, very instinctive athlete, incredibly athletic, good tackler, all that stuff. You're losing some proficiency here. And now you do have a couple of analytical darlings coming in Dodson and Baker, but they're unproven and they're on 1-year deals. So, I mean, I'll be very curious to see what McDonald tasks these linebackers with, because they've both been kind of situational guys in their career so far.
Yeah. And part of that too, like, and those like over the middle, like, dig type stuff too is the safeties too. Everyone's got to work together
100%
as well. Like you could see earlier in the year when Julian was starting, particularly in that Rams game, it was like the Rams game to open the season. Julian was like a tick late. It felt like on all the dig routes, like he was getting the tackles, but it's like, all right, well, Puka already caught it, so it's not helping. And I feel like that's going to take some time as well. But that's also where the Ravens defense was better too. They just had better. More consistent DB play as well. It all worked together really well.
The space between defenders is just so much smaller in Baltimore. There was so much space between the defenders in Seattle.
Yeah, and I just feel like they just weren't. Man, the instincts weren't allowed to kick in. At least not consistently. Right. There were some games where the defense was solid. Like I think after the first 2 drives against the Bengals, the Seahawks were nails.
Unreal.
I don't think
they were unreal in that game.
I think they only gave up 3 more points after those first 2 drives, and that was because I think Geno threw a pick. But then the subsequent drive went three plays, 0 yards, and they just kicked a field goal because of where the pick ended up happening. So it was like damn near a shutout after the first 2 drives, and that was a healthy Burrow, and I think he had all his guys too, all his receivers. Yep. So that was a shutdown, and they still lost. That sucks. But like that game in particular, you just saw Reek just running with Jamar Chase. Trey Brown had a pick. Spoon had a couple of PBUs. Like they were just on it. Quandre was coming down towards the box on third downs. It was perfect. Jamal's knee hadn't turned to mush quite yet. Like it was just everything just worked really well. So you could see it. There were flashes, but then you have like the Dallas game where it's like, yo, did y'all practice? Because this is why is this guy wide open? Why is this happening? Why are you guys so grabby on third down?
I'd say nothing about the Ravens and Steelers games, man, where it almost looked like Seahawks defense wasn't even interested in being out there. All right, let's move it all the way up to the line of scrimmage on the defensive side here. Grade the D-line's performance last year.
This is like a D. This was not good.
Yeah.
The pass rush, super inconsistent, and you were getting nothing out of guys for a good point of the year. Not like everyone, but it was a lot of nothing. Like nothing that you got nothing out of like DT for quite some time. At least it felt like it. Like, there's probably some decent numbers in there. I think DT's pressure rate was like fine by the end of the year.
He's so matchup dependent, man. He'll like get 2.5 sacks one game based on, how the opposing tackle, what his tendencies are as a block, and then he won't get a sack for like a month and a half.
Yeah, it's hot and cold, but also I feel like his superpower is the speed, and that does take time to set up. But if you're not out there enough, you can't really set it up, and then like you said, you're kind of feasting on like a team that has its backup tackle in that week or something like that. Right. A starter rolls his ankle, DT comes in and just blows by the backup, right? Something like that. So for a while there, just felt like you weren't feeling him. So maybe nothing is not the right word, but just you weren't feeling him. You didn't feel D Hall most of the year, to be honest.
Well, and how big was the Nwosu injury to this defense last year?
Right. Yeah, it was huge. You lose Chenna, then you don't really feel Frank when he comes in. A much smaller Frank than the Seahawks had in the previous iteration. You feel Boye for like 2 months. That was great. Like Boye was on a run and then it just stopped. I forget which game, but it just stopped there for a second. And even then, some of those games where he got the sack and the sack was the only game you really felt him. Mm-hmm. It was just like that one play out of like 50 snaps or something like that. So that the front just wasn't bringing it consistently. I thought Big Cat played pretty well. You felt him in some games with defensive tackles. It's just hard to consistently feel their presence because they're taking on 600 pounds of fat dude across from them. That's just tough. Jay Reed the same way, but it was just you weren't feeling them up front. The line of scrimmage wasn't getting reset consistently. Tackling was really rough. Edges not being set. I mean, was it last year's game against the 49ers where the first play was like an 80-yard run or something like that by Christian McCaffrey?
Yep.
It was just awful. It was another game where you could tell that Kyle Shanahan was like, you got 52 on the edge? Okay, cool. Toss. Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's see if he sets that edge. And the answer was no. So I mean, I think Jamal ended up taking a bad angle on that snap too. So it wasn't just DT, but I remember KJ on the radio called out. He was like, yeah, part of that issue was just how like DT was aligned and played that and turned into a big play. So yeah, it was kind of a mess up there. And that's unfortunate because I feel like everyone I named has talent. It wasn't like I named any scrubs. It was like, you guys should all be on the roster. You should be starting. I'd probably start Boye and Chenna on the edge, but either way. Oh, I even mentioned Draymond.
I was just going to say, the biggest free agent contract John Schneider's ever handed out was to Draymond Jones. And I feel like his name was called like 6 times all season long.
Yeah, and that was unfortunate because he was another one. Feel is the right word for him, too. It's like, I want to feel the $50 million that they just gave you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's not it. I don't even know if I can need to put a number on which sacks or pressures, hits, whatever. Just let me feel it. Let me watch the games and be like, ooh, 55? He's nice. Mm-hmm. Like that's. I just want to feel that because when you're watching film, at least for me, I usually don't have a lot of noise going on, and sometimes I don't even know all the players' names, particularly on the other team. Sometimes I'm just like, ooh, 32 is nice. Who's that? And then you look up, and he's some random, 5th-round pick, but by the end of the year, he balling. That's how I felt about my first time watching Hufanga on the Niners. I didn't know who he was.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, 29 is a baller. And then he ended up being all-pro that season. Especially now with guys changing numbers, sometimes it's a guy I know, but I'm like, oh, that's him?
Yeah.
He's cold, So I just want to feel that when I watch Draymond. I just want to watch the tape and be like, 55 is like that.
Right.
He just didn't feel that way, particularly when he got moved to outside backer.
After the Mosu injury, man, he's being asked to do things he was not signed to do.
282 pounds playing outside backer. Asking him to do that just is suboptimal to me. Hopefully if he's going to keep doing that, he's dropped some weight. Because I think I asked him late in the year. I was like, "What you playing at?" He's like 282, 280, something like that. I'm just like, dude, and he knows that you just can't. That's Michael Bennett defensive tackle weight. That's not Frank Clark rush the passer weight. Yep. That's a big difference. Them 15, 17 pounds. they matter quite a bit when you're actually dropping coverage and cover, Brian Robinson Jr. of the Commanders. There's a reason the dude was open on one of them scrambles, in that games, because 55 is being asked to do something I wouldn't ask him to do. So hopefully they're a lot better this year. But yeah, I feel like D-line situation up front was just a mess last year.
It felt like the weakest part of the team, except for maybe this next group. I'm going to switch to the other side of the trenches, the offensive line. Look, man, the obvious caveat here is Abe Lucas getting hurt in week 1. The difference in this I said last week, I think Abe Lucas is one of the 5 most important players on this team. And that was borne out over the last 2 seasons when you look at this offense's overall production when he's on the field versus when he's not. There's so much talk about Geno Smith's regression last year, and maybe 2022 was just his Case Keenum year or his Nick Foles year where he was real good because no one really knew anything about him and the league figured him out. There is nothing about Geno's tape that makes me say he was any worse last year than the year before. It's just that he faced a league high pressure rate, and I don't think Shane Waldron was equipped, or at least equipped him to have counter punches for, okay, look, that dude's going to be on you in 2.1 seconds. That ball's got to be out. That's not how that offense was set up. So all of that, gigantic caveat, grade the O-line last year.
Probably another D. It just was not. It was just another mess. And it's not even, like, losing Abe does suck, right? And they lost Charles for a little bit too. But I do feel like I wanted to feel like a bigger upgrade from some of the other guys too, and just didn't see that. Like, for instance, Abe had nothing to do with on one of those 4th downs against the Cowboys. I want to say it was a short yardage situation. They gave it to Zach, and Charles just got blown up by somebody. I want to say DeMarcus Lawrence maybe, and just makes the play in the backfield, and they end up turnover on downs, right? It's like, I just don't want to see something like that, and I got to have it. A lot of those big plays that Geno had in his 2022 season, you watch him back, and a lot of it is because he has time. Mm-hmm. Or you watch what Ken was able to do on some of those explosive runs, and it's like, oh, he was following 67, and to the promised land. Or 68, with D-Lou. So, even look at, like, the sack that Charles gave up against the Steelers. I forget the dude's name, but it was like a random rookie. It's not like it was TJ Watt, Right. And Geno ends up fumbling on that play, or like Geno had a touchdown to DK if he has a little bit more time, but Charles got walked back into him. This was against the Ravens in the red zone, and it threw off Geno's, like, I don't know if he actually got to Geno or bumped him or whatever, but he ends up not being able to throw what I believe would have been a touchdown to DK. Just plays like that. Every left tackle has those. So I'm not like trying to just cherry pick the bad ones, but I'm trying to give examples of, like, this is what I don't want to see. Like, if Micah Parsons gets you, if Bosa gets you, if Watt gets you, if Myles Garrett gets you, like, come on, I understand. It makes sense. Those guys, they are who they are for a reason, you know. But if he's a top 10 tackle, or a top 10 pick, you're kind of supposed to be like that.
You got to at least neutralize.
Like,
you got to play him to a draw at the very least.
Yeah, you're supposed to be like, what Trent Williams is, or what Laramie Tunsil is, or like what Dwayne Brown was. Like, you're drafted kind of with that thought in mind, So that's what I just want to see. And it isn't just him, the center situation was still not good again. It just feels like everything after the Unger trade has just been a mess. It's just been awful.
Yeah.
It's been throwing darts and just not getting anything to stick. The guard situations weren't great. The run blocking in general just felt bad for Ken and those guys sometimes. And the running backs played a part in this as well, but it just didn't feel in sync, didn't feel dominant in a lot of games. It felt like Geno was having to make magic happen. And then I was actually talking to some guys, this was towards the end of the year, about, like, how many times Geno had to make up for stuff that we couldn't even tell was wrong.
That's right.
That's right. A guy came free, or Geno had to move out of the pocket or whatever. We couldn't even tell that somebody did the wrong thing. Geno's impressive, man. Once I learned some more about what Geno was doing, like at the line or problem solving or guys running the wrong route, I was like, oh, Geno's great. Like, he's fine. But yeah, in general, O-line, I think that was everything. It comes down to what they can do. Yeah. They are the engine of the team in my mind. If they're nice, this team's gonna be nice. If these guys are not nice, then you're looking at a maybe 500 team, depending on some turnover and injury luck this year.
Yeah. Well, we started back to front, and right now we got a C-, a C, and 2 Ds. I mean, this team is barely staying academically eligible so far in 2023. But now I think we get to the strength of the 2023 Seahawks, and I want to get your grade on the playmakers. And by that, I mean the running backs, wide receivers, the tight ends. Talk to me about how you feel they did their job last year.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty solid with what they like. If we lump them all together, like I thought, based on what he was asked to do, like I thought DK was really good. I thought Jacson, considering he broke his wrists, he was really solid for the most part. Like grading on a curve because he's a rook, like won't do that in year 2. Obviously, like there was some times where it looked like he ran the wrong route or something like that. And it just kind of hurt. It kind of hurt the whole operation. Tyler was still Tyler. Ken was still explosive. His numbers were still solid. The tight ends were just kind of put in the spot where it's like y'all just getting cardio. It's just it was incredible. I looked up, and then Noah didn't score all year. I was talking to him, and then I was like, "Yeah, man, what's happening?" And you could just tell he just did not want to dive into whatever was really wrong. Because there's just no way Noah Fant shouldn't catch a touchdown in the season. Right. That's just absurd.
Totally.
I don't care what the O-line's doing. I don't care what the scheme is, who else is on the team. That dude is too athletic and too talented. And we see it at least like once or twice a year where it's just like, dude, get him the ball. Remember that Giants game where he just catches some little ball in the flat? Next thing you know, he's 50 yards down the field to the 1. He had a similar play against the Cardinals in 2022 that iced the game in Arizona. He catches a little quick pass and he's down the sideline to ice the game. He's so athletic to be that big. He needs the ball. So I thought they were probably like a B+. They were good. They were solid as a whole. I feel like you could nitpick individual guys. Like if I want to nitpick Disley or Noah or even Jacson, DK's catch percentage was really low. But I don't know how much of that was all him per se. But
right.
Yeah, I think in general that was the strength of the group, as you could expect. So I think, yeah, that's a solid group, man. When you look at it all together, it's a top 8 skill position room.
Oh yeah,
that's really really good.
Yeah, I think there's at least 25 teams that are trading their running backs and wide receivers straight up for what Seattle's got going on.
Oh yeah. Oh, without question. That man, Jackson's just there's so much potential with Jacson because he's not just. I was telling somebody this was before the I think Ravens game. It was just like, Jackson's a slot dude, underneath shifty. I was like, dude, he can go down the field if he got those ops. Just not getting those ops. And I think in the Ravens game, he caught like a 30-yard bomb or something like that down the sideline. It's like, see, look, I'm telling you, he can do it. And then,
look at that game winner against Philadelphia, right? Like that is an NFL big boy beat the guy across from you with the game on the line route.
And then the Niners, I think on Thanksgiving, he had the long touchdown, or not touchdown, the one-hander on third down. Like, he can do it. He barbecued Deron Bland on a long ball. I think it got called back, but it would have been a touchdown. It was that sequence where they ended up having to score like 3 times against the Cowboys. Like, Jacson can go downfield as well. There's just so much potential with him. He was a top 12 yak guy, I want to say, last year. So, man, he fixed the screen game by himself. It felt like last year. 100%. There's a lot of potential with that room if the O-line is just, like, not bad. Even if it's just average. Mm-hmm. Just be average, and I think that elevates the entire team, not just the offense.
Oh, 100%, man. And look, we talked about Geno a little bit earlier when we were talking about the offensive line, but I want you to grade the quarterback play last year, and that's 95% Geno. We had a little bit of Drew Lock in there.
Yeah, I'd probably give that a B. I thought Geno, let's just look at Geno mostly. I thought Geno had a good season given the circumstances. Kind of grading on a curve a little bit there too. Again, this is not just on the film, but even hearing like some of the stuff that he had to correct behind the scenes of what he was overcoming, whether it was blocking stuff or routes. I look at example, and I think Nate Tice has pointed this out too. I think we're colleagues still at The Athletic. I'm not sure. I know he's writing at Yahoo, but either way, Nate, great job. he pointed out that you guys remember there's like a 2-route combination with Noah Fant and JSN, where they run on opposite sides of the field to kind of cross, and Geno throws it to Noah, and in between like 5 Cardinals, and then Noah catches it, and then
that throw was like fucking insane.
It's like a screen grab where you can see like, oh my goodness, Jackson's wide. It looked like he's butt naked open, and then I was thinking like, nah, that doesn't seem right. And then Nate, who's way better at the film analyst stuff than me, was like, no guys, Jackson ran the wrong route. And I'm like, okay, cool, thank you. I saw Nate at the combine. I was like, okay, I wasn't bugging. I knew something wasn't right.
I saw that tweet. He got so much pushback on that throw. He's trying to highlight this great throw that Geno made, and everyone's like, he made the wrong read. JSN was wide open for a touchdown. It's like, man, that just displays, and not like I know everything, but it just displays a lack of understanding of what the QB's progression is in a situation like that.
Yeah, I thought he ran it wrong, and then when Nate saw it, I was like, okay, now I know what I'm talking about here. At least I was pretty sure, and I ran it by some other people too. But that's an example. I think the same thing happened on the first third down play against the Niners on Thanksgiving too. I think DK's not open as he should have been because I think Jackson brings his defender over there. At least that's a hunch. I haven't run that by anyone yet. But yeah, there's so much potential there, man, when he's got it going. But it kind of illustrates what Geno is dealing with that we don't always see. And Geno's not perfect too. He's got to protect the ball better. He forced some throws, particularly in that Bengals game. Forced some in the red zone, then ended up getting picked. Just some bad stuff. I think the Panthers, he had a bad pick there as well. But some of it was just miscommunications to the Ravens game where he threw an interception trying to target Tyler. Tyler doesn't get the call from Bobo, so Tyler runs the wrong route. And then Geno throws thinking that he got the call, and then Geno Stone just picks it off, and it looks like Geno doesn't know what he's doing. Turns out the rookie doesn't give Tyler the call because it's third down and they're on the road, right? So that's where you use like, hey, man, the guy next to you, tell him, it's like a game of telephone. Doesn't get the call. Geno thinks he does. Boom, interception. That's why Geno's grade probably seems higher than you would think based on his numbers. But all of this context, I think, matters for the QB spot because it isn't just where the ball went. It's like, did the center make the right Mike ID? Did the running back pick the right guy? Was the slide the right direction? Was the play call this? You look at that fourth down, the end of the game against the Cowboys. It goes down as Geno Smith incomplete to DJ Dallas. And you're just looking at that like, dog, why the hell was that the call? What were we doing here? Why would that even be a thought to be hot off Micah Parsons? Like, what?
Yeah.
How we get there, man?
The most impossible pickup assignment of all time is having the running back come across the formation to pick up an unfettered Micah Parsons DPOY candidate.
Yeah, man. When I talked to DJ Dallas about that after the game, he was like, "Yeah, we were hot off 11," and I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, "You, what? You sure?" Like, it's like, yeah. He explained the whole play to me. He was like, "Yeah, we're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that. We're hot off him." I'm like, "Ooh, hot off Micah, huh? All right." That's what I think. That might have been when I lost faith in Shane. Right, that day I was like, you know what, this ain't it.
Well,
this ain't it.
That's perfect transition in the last category. I want you to grade the coaching and not just the head coach, but the coordinators, position coaches as well, because we've got a full reset there. So this is not just a Pete Carroll conversation. This is Shane Waldron, this is Clint Hurt, and on down the line.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only F I'd give. Mm-hmm. I just think they just didn't get it done and had the talent to. I do agree with John Schneider's assessment that they overachieved in 2022 and underachieved in 2023. I agree with that assessment. Yeah. And why the grade's so low is because it felt like the situational stuff was just bad. It just felt like the other team had the answers far more often than they did, and it felt like they were getting barbecued on some simple stuff on defense. Like that Rams game, I know that's week 1, and we didn't know Puka was basically Randy Moss at the time, but
yeah.
It was not like they were running this like dynamic stuff. It was like it was just a bunch of dig routes, where Puka's just over the middle, Tutu over the middle. Like I think Tutu and Puka both went over 100 yards in that game with no Cooper Kupp. That's insane. That's insane. It sounds made up. It's like, man, you guys got beat by a dude named Puka and a guy named Tutu. These sound like fake names, and they went for like $1.15 each, and that just shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't. They should have had more games that look like the Bengals game, and instead they had more games that look like the Cowboys game.
Yeah.
And that just should not be the case with all the talent that they had. They just looked ill prepared for everything that the Niners, had for them, the Rams as well. I mean, they probably should have lost to the Cardinals too in the final game. So much. I mean, everyone gets fired either way, probably. But you look at, I don't know if it's showed on the broadcast, but Quandre says something to the kicker of the Lions right before he misses that game winner. I forget what he said, but I think they played together in Detroit. I forget the kicker's name, but he said something.
Matt Prater?
I was going to say,
yeah, it was Prater. Yeah, he says something to him, and you could see Prater acknowledge it as the defense coming off from the field, and then he pushes it.
Yeah.
And it just, and sometimes I think about, man, what if Quandre didn't say nothing?
Right. Yeah. Again, something else that doesn't show up in the box score, right? Like that's just a missed kick on paper, but yeah, you wonder what all goes in that because. I mean, these kickers don't miss in practice, right? So it's all between the ears in game time, especially when the game's on the line. Now, look, I want to circle back on this now because I want you to tell me if you think the Seahawks have improved, regressed, or stayed roughly the same in each of these categories. Or to put it another way, are you anticipating that the 2024 team will be better, worse, or equal to their 2023 performance in each category? And for this, we can go kind of rapid fire and we'll go in reverse order, staying with the coaching. What are you anticipating? Are you anticipating an improvement over that F grade?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. No, I am. Even if it's only slight, I think defensively, it'll probably be a little better. I think third down should be a little better. And even if that goes from F to a D, that's improvement. I'm pretty sure they were the worst third down team in the league on defense. Not the Eagles, maybe. And the Cardinals, they just kind of rotated, all being awful. So I think that changes. I think every position group will probably be better with the exception of the secondary. Because actually linebackers too, man. That back seven. If I had to rope them together, I could see everyone's grade getting better, except those two. Because man, that's a lot of unknowns. That's a little bit too many unknowns for me to feel confident about guaranteeing improvement. Because, dude, this is a lot of dudes who are on 1-year deals. I feel like for a reason. You know what I mean? Like sometimes guys just get it wrong with like Michael Bennett should have got more in free agency. That 2013 year, and Cliff actually did get offered more. That year he signed with the Seahawks. He just took less to play with Seattle because of the Legion of Boom. I think Cleveland offered him like $40 million or something. It was a deal they ended up giving to someone else, like something Kruger maybe. I think is who got Cliff's
Paul
deal.
Kruger. That's
Paul Kruger, yeah.
Yes. I think Paul Kruger got Cliff's deal. I'm pretty sure that's how that went.
Worked out really well for them too.
So it's like sometimes the league has it wrong where they just undervalue a certain player, but a lot of the time the league knows what's up, and I feel like there's a reason these guys are on like these 1-year situations. Like Jerome Baker probably is like a long-term guy. He just got hurt, and they're in a cap crunch over there in Miami, so he's probably not in that particular situation. But at the same time, there's a reason that his number was what it is too. So you are what your value is, what someone's willing to pay you. So I'm just really concerned about all of that coming together right away. Because even last year, these guys had played together, JB, Bobby, Quandre and Jamal, and that still looked like it didn't mesh.
Right.
That took some time. So now let's imagine that with dudes who don't know each other. Jerome's still not practicing currently. Neither is Tyrell, right? Yeah. So you got factor that in. None of these guys know Kavon Wallace. Julian's he went from being the new kid on the block to like, all right, dude, can you kind of lead the unit now?
Yeah, right.
And then you throw Rayshawn in there. None of these guys have any background with Mike McDonald. I don't know how many of these guys have any background with the position coaches. There's just so much new. Like, damn, the first day of school. The first day of school feeling might go all the way to like Halloween, with everyone just getting to know each other. Like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? How does your recovery go? How do you watch film? How do you process this? That's just a lot for me to ask, particularly of the back seven.
Yeah.
The talent is kind of there, but chemistry, going back and watching old Legion of Boom stuff, and even just looking at other defensive backfields around the league, chemistry matters quite a bit, man. And all it takes is one or two dudes to not be on the same page, and George Kittle's wide open. or CD Lamb's wide open, or, I'm not talking about like flea flickers or something either, just like genuine, just regular route combinations, or Puka's wide open or something like that. So I'm just that's part of the group I'm the most skeptical of. With a healthy Abe, I like the O-line better. Abe's hurt, I'm scared to death.
Yep.
I think I'm with you, Jackson. I think Abe's their best lineman. Like I don't even think there's a debate there for me. But I just think he's also their lineman who has like the highest ceiling too. I think like healthy Abe for a full season is like getting all pro votes. Probably doesn't make the team because of how stacked that position is, but is of that caliber of player.
We saw that from him as a rookie. He was borderline all pro when he was just getting his toes wet in the league. And so losing that second year development does hurt. But yeah, I generally agree with you. And regarding the secondary and even the linebackers back seven, since there's so many new faces, you made the salient point earlier that it is all interconnected. And if you're not getting pressure up front, it makes it so much more difficult on the back half of the defense, because I think another thing that we tend to underrate as fans is the value of an extra half second for the offense, and because that's one or maybe two additional reads the quarterbacks can go through. NFL quarterbacks, fastest processors on the planet. You give them an extra beat, they're going to find somebody open. So, hopefully the pressure increases a significant amount. That's going to make it a lot easier on the new guys on the backside.
It makes all the difference. It's what Cliff factored in when he signed with Seattle in 2013. Because remember, they had played the Lions that year. Mm-hmm. That was the game that Sherm switched his Twitter handle, because they were playing Megatron. Mm-hmm. And Cliff didn't know these guys, but at the time he was like, yo, they talking a lot of stuff over there. And then Megatron had 46 yards on 3 catches with like 3 drops. None of those catches were on Sherm. And it was like, oh, all right. That's it. Maybe these guys are for real. So he figured, all right, I'm going to take this 2-year deal. I'm going to get an extra half second to rush the passer, and then I'm going to get paid. And, Cliff got some vision over there. You can just tell he had some foresight back then. And it makes all the difference, in the world. I can think of a ton of plays last year where it just, if the quarterback had to let it go like a half a second earlier, pretty much every throw Matt Stafford's ever made against a Seahawks defense, it feels like if he just had to let it go a half second earlier, the outcome is different. But even like one play that stands out from that Dallas game, you can tell that was a really bad game. I keep coming back to it. But there's a play where Darrell Taylor has Dak like bear hugged like family members who ain't seen each other in a while, and Dak just shoves him off. And because he does that, it's scramble drill now. I think Spoon comes off his guy to try to go get Dak, and then it just leaves. I think his last name was like Turpin or something, wide open on the sideline, like a 13-yard gain, first down. Yep. It's a simple play, but it's the difference between getting Dak on like a 6-yard loss versus it's a 19-yard swing or something like that. Moves the chains.
Plus, a new set of downs. Exactly. And that's
in a game that was a one-possession game, too,
Like, you see a 13-yard completion, you're like, oh, that's not one of the most important plays of the game. But then you look at the context of it, and you're like, that could have been a sack. That changes everything, right? That's points off the board. That's better field position. All of that stuff. One last question I have for you about the roster is something that I'm asking mostly because there's a lot of Seahawks fans asking about it. And there's a lot of people who cover the league who see the quarterback's situation as being up in the air. They see the Sam Howell signing or trade as a move towards maybe Geno's not the guy. You look at the switch from Drew Lock to Sam Howell, what they paid to get him, all of that stuff. Is there a quarterback controversy in Seattle?
I wouldn't say controversy, but Geno's story adds validity to the idea that Howell could be, next up this time next year, because the profile is very similar. He wasn't as high a pick as Geno was, but it's the same idea. It's like, all right, you got thrown in there early. You were a turnover machine, which Geno was with the Jets. Whether that's how much of that is his fault, honestly, it doesn't even matter for the purposes of this. But Sam was a turnover machine. He's a sack machine as well. I haven't seen someone get sacked and turn it over that much quite some time. Usually you do one or the other, but he was both. He was bad. But you see the talent there. You look at those last 2 drives against the Seahawks that Sam Hill had, and you're like, you got something here.
Oh, no. The guy can play. I mean, I think he's the first player in like 10 some years to have what was it, 90 combined sacks and turnovers.
Yeah, it just sets way too many negative plays. Yeah, but I think that, and its profile is pretty similarly to Geno in that, like, Geno was pretty bad statistically and just with the ball protection in New York, but he had time to figure it out, and the talent that you saw coming out of college started to really show in the NFL. And you could just, because we just saw something similar with Geno, it just means we can possibly imagine what it'd look like with Sam. That's not a guarantee, because I think what gets underrated in Geno's story is his mindset. You know, this is a guy who was a high recruit. You know, he wore the number 12, to try to be like Tom Brady. You know, he was a high pick, and he was just always a very confident dude, and it makes sense too. It was nice to hear from other guys last year or 2 years ago when we were talking about Geno, and they're like, man, I knew G was nice, man. Y'all seen his West Virginia tape? And I'm just like, yeah, I guess he was killing it, huh? And you go look, and it's like, Geno put 70. Yeah. Geno, Stedman Bailey, and Tavon Austin was just not fair.
Yeah.
At West Virginia. And you can see how a guy like that never lost his confidence. Geno signed with the Giants thinking, oh, I'll just beat out Eli. Which at the time, think about that. For going into 2017, for Geno Smith, what happened with the Jets to think, I will beat out Eli Manning. That's so ballsy. And he did it.
Yeah.
I think it was Ben McAdoo started him over Eli, ended Eli's starting streak because he was like, this Geno kid is better for our team right now. Now, I think they lost that game, and then the coach got fired literally the next day. But Geno was still right. He was right in his process that I can beat out this Hall of Famer. He had the same thought process in the Chargers, didn't get the op there, and then he had the same thought process with the Seahawks. He was like, I can beat out Russ. Because he has that mindset, that's why I don't want to use the word controversy, because Geno you can give Geno $100 million and he's still going to be the guy that rode the bench all those years, because he's a inherently hungry dude and arrogant, confident, I guess, if you want to use a nicer word for it, but I call that some arrogance, and that's good though.
I think arrogance is super important. There's a theory that to be a successful NFL quarterback, you either need to believe in God or believe you are a God. And I think Geno's got a little bit of both.
Yeah, man.
going for him.
He plays that way too, and I just think that's hard to beat. That's why he didn't care when the Seahawks were on like this run of visiting Anthony Richardson, or no, what was the groups they were visiting?
It was Richardson and Stroud and Levis and Young. I mean, they went and took the selfies with the entire top of that class.
Geno was like, I don't care, man. I'm in Dallas throwing with, Lockett or whoever. It's like, I'm out here I'm going to beat out whoever they bring in. He felt like that when it was him and Drew. He was, I'm just going to beat out whoever they bring in. He was like, because again, this is a dude who thought he could beat out Eli, and did. So that's just hard. And he puts in the work too, to make that happen. And he's got the arm talent and the brain to match it up. So no, I think because of age, you just have to question how long they'll rock with Geno. But the talent thing, I don't really think it's close. I think Geno is far closer to where Kirk Cousins is as a talent than he is like to Sam Howell.
Yes.
I think Geno, as a processor, as an arm talent guy, as a pocket manipulator, maneuverer, or whatever, is pretty damn good. And we've seen the best of Geno looks really good. Like, it looks really good.
Well, we've had some real QB guys on this show asking about Geno. I'm talking Steven Ruiz and Danny Kelly and Ben Solak and Derek Klassen. These are guys that are obsessed with quarterback. Nate Tice, obsessed with quarterback play. And all of them have Geno somewhere in that 8 to 12 range in terms of top NFL quarterbacks. And you say, okay, even if you agree with that, which I do, but some folks are a little bit more skeptical, I think, just because Geno's track record and his career path and all that stuff. But even say that, I think the natural tendency is to be like, okay, so he's like a top third, maybe quarterback in the NFL, top 40% quarterback. That's not that good. You need someone else. You got to remember, if you're a top 12 quarterback, that means you're one of the 12 best on the planet at doing this thing. We have a tendency to judge it out of 32. You're judging it out of 8 billion. And if you're top 12, I think you got something there. So if I'm hearing you correctly, this job is Geno's in 2024, barring, injury or really terrible play, but it is up in the air, maybe 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, just because of the cost there, you'd probably just have to redo his deal. It'd be real simple. The thing about the NFL that I've learned is it has been fun. I love that they're showing this behind the scenes stuff on Hard Knocks with the Giants
Mm-hmm.
too. It's like you can keep whoever you want if you want them that bad. You really can. You
Yeah.
can do whatever you want to keep the players. Would they lose Saquon over $1 million? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, you can keep whoever you want if you want them that bad. So if they want Geno that bad, he'll be around. And the thing is, Geno has the mental part of it. You know, I tweeted a clip I think a couple of days ago where I think he's in Dallas. I think they're on SMU's campus, and he's huddled up with some guys, and he tells them like this right, we're going to the Super Bowl. Like that's his mindset. You know, he just has it. You know, he's not really a whiner or a complainer. He's a play through injury guy. I mean, you guys know how much these guys here love the late Tavares Jackson. And part of that, it's not like Tavares was out here spinning it for real. But he played with a torn pec, you know, and he took care of his guys. You know, he invited them to his house and cooked for them and helped them with the plays. You know, he taught Doug Baldwin the plays, taught Ricardo Lockett the plays, hung out with Sidney. You know, he was one of the boys, but he was also a worker and a leader.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can quantify just because the dude's younger and has a strong arm as well, or is he cheaper? Nah, man, quarterback's a leader. He can't be a doofus. He can't be lazy. He can't complain. He has to be early and stay late and lie to the media about whose fault things were, you know, and just take the blame. Geno's great at that part.
So
Geno
good
gets
at
up there every game, and I'll know somebody ran the wrong route or the play was run wrong, and he'll be like, I got to be better. And I don't say nothing else. I'm just like, yep, he's got the stuff. That's the important stuff. That's even the stuff that the last guy ain't have, you know, like it wasn't that. And that's why some guys didn't like him. He wouldn't get up there and be like, I got to be better. Even if he just threw like 3 picks and be like, yeah, no, we all can be better. Now, Geno's like, I can be better. I wasn't good enough today. You know, that's important. Whether it's true or not, it's just guys need to hear that sometimes. Who cares that your rookie left guard blew the block? Just say you gotta be better, bro. There's no you gain nothing from saying that your O-line needs to give you more time. You gain literally nothing from doing that. You know, so and Geno understands that part too. And I think the more that Mike McDonald and his staff are around him, the more I think that's how you get the benefit of the doubt from a new staff too. Is accountability.
100%.
Every new staff's going to value that accountability and toughness. That goes just as far along as a good go ball. You know, if you're talking about quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, it's still top down. You know, the quarterbacks get the most press, the most criticism, the most praise, and the most attention from the coaches. And I know that was a thing with the last iteration of the Seahawks is the attention gap that the quarterback received compared to the rest of the roster. But frankly, that's just how it goes because that's the highest leverage position. We know all of that. Now, listen, man, there is one last thing I want to touch on before we get out of here. And for this, I want to time travel a little bit. We are now in the middle of February in 2025. All right. We're looking back on the 2024 Seahawks. What was the standout quality of this team and how are fans feeling for, you know, looking at the Seahawks 2025 and beyond?
Standout quality. I would probably say their speed. I'd probably say that. I feel like on both sides of the ball, I feel like I could really show up on defense in particular. I feel like they got a lot of guys who are just going to feel like they're everywhere. Like I don't maybe not sound like it. I'm like cautiously optimistic about what Mike McDonald can do because I feel like he has the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he really does. I do feel like by the end of the year, we'll kind of be thinking about them the way people are probably looking at the Rams right now. You know, the Rams were kind of similar where it's like you knew their quarterback was solid and you knew like a couple of their playmakers were solid. Like their running back, Kupp, even Higbee. You felt like they had a couple guys on defense that you knew you could rely on. You know, obviously Aaron Donald. Mm-hmm. And then everything else you were like, who else is on that defense? Right. But then by the end of the year, you were like, oh, Kobe Turner. Or they got another dude up front too. I think it was Byron Young. You know, like they had guys, Ernest Jones, they had guys emerge by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. You know, even Akilla Witherspoon had a good year for them. So I think the Seahawks are going to kind of be like that. And that Rams team didn't go super far, but they were good. They were competitive. They had some really explosive moments. They were a playoff team. They were down to the wire in their playoff loss, I want to say. So I feel like that's kind of how we'll be looking at, like, all right, cool. If they do this time next year, going into the combine, it might be like, if they do X, Y, and Z, they can catch the Niners. Or if they do X, Y, and Z, they can catch the Lions. So I think if they don't win the NFC, something went wrong. You know, I think like they got it. It's probably their secondary if there's something did go wrong. But like I think that we'll be talking about the Seahawks like that, as like a feisty team that's on the cusp. I want to say maybe very similar to the 2021 Eagles, whichever year that was. They lost to the Bucks on the road in the playoffs. Like, they were clearly good. They clearly had a good like nucleus, and then they were like, we could use like an AJ Brown. You know, maybe the Seahawks' next move is to get like that next piece. It's whatever the next version of the Jimmy Graham trade is, and the next version of the Percy Harvin, Jamal Adams type trade, but just a better version of it. You know,
maybe it'll have to be.
Maybe the Marshawn trade is a better like comp.
Sure.
Like, you know, like that. They're still going to be missing a piece, because I don't think this team is like going to overwhelm anyone with talent. Particularly in the NFC got guys, so I think that's going to be an issue this year, like in terms of the ceiling. But I do feel, I don't think by this time next year we're like, I don't know about this Mike McDonald dude. Maybe they should go back to getting an old coach.
No,
thing didn't work. I don't think we'll be at that point or anything.
No, you know, I could see heading into 2025 after 2024 season, I could see Seattle as being like a trendy pick. It reminds me of the Lions going into last year, right? The Lions, same thing. Barely missed the playoffs at 9-8. Won that final game against Green Bay to put Seattle into the playoffs. And you felt like, oh my gosh, they are right there. Like, this is the first year where the future of this team is here. And you see the vision, the coaching has crystallized with what Dan Campbell was building, all that. That's how I anticipate the Seahawks being going into 2025. Is that, like, I think they're going to be a trendy pick to win the division and make a playoff run. Last question for you is, in the middle of February in 2025, and we're looking back, what was the last game that the Seahawks played? Was it Week 18, final regular season game, or is it something later?
No, I think Week 18. I kind of would be surprised, just because of the strength of the other teams, that they would be a playoff team. They got some tough breaks, man. Like, I think the AFC East is going to be really good. You know, I think like playing Buffalo's tough, playing the Jets, as long as Aaron Rodgers, you know, doesn't try to be the VP or something.
Right.
They should be good. Patriots might stink, but that game's so early.
Dolphins are going to be an early test on this defense, tell you that much.
Yeah, playing the Dolphins in September versus December is tough. I like pretty much 3 of the 4 teams in the NFC North as well, so you get that whole division as well, plus your own division. I think Jonathan Gannon's going to figure some things out in Arizona. They can't possibly
they're
be worse.
feisty.
But even then, like we just talked about, they were a Quandre Diggs joke away from beating the Seahawks.
Right.
You know, in Week 18. So I think their schedule's just tough. You know, I think the Niners are just playing a different brand of ball than everyone else. They're just really, really, really good.
Best roster in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's not even close to me. Like, it's just special stuff. I'm a big Brock Purdy guy too, so that's part of it. Yeah, I think I could see it probably another 9-8 year or something like that, but that's just maybe not enough, just because the tiebreakers or whatever. You know, it's just a tough schedule, man. Even the teams you think are like a gimme, you just never know. I think they should win their first 2.
Schedule, man. And like, to speak to that, you know, you and I are in agreement. We think Seattle is going to be better than last year in most categories. And they won 9 games last year. It's like, yeah, even if they're better, that could be 9 wins or less this year. I think their Vegas over-under is 7.5 right now. To me, that's like an easy smash over. Like, if they go 7-10 or worse, I'll be surprised. But yeah, you know, I've got them. I do think that they are a playoff team, but they're not going to win this division. And so they're going to have to be better than the Packers or the Lions. They're going to have to be better than the Cowboys. You know, they're going to have to be better than
those, or even the Bears.
You know what I mean? Like, the Bears,
I'm a little
the Bears
bullish
can
on that
surprise.
Bears roster.
Absolutely. I mean, so yeah, it'll be tough to get in the NFC for sure, because I do think there is still that big gap between the best teams in the NFC, which right now, you know, I quantify as the Niners, Eagles, and Cowboys. I see all of those teams as significantly better than Seattle, but I would put Seattle in that next tier in the NFC.
I'm trying to be optimistic on.
I know.
And when you look at the rest of the league, is when you really like, oh, other teams got better too. You know, It's not like the Seahawks, the only teams that hired new coaches and got good players or whatever. You know, other teams have good players. They have continuity at important spots. You know, all of that stuff, you know, starts to really matter, particularly when you get towards the end of the year. And then the later in the season it gets, just comes to, are you healthy? And then can your guys beat the other guy in front of them? That's really what it comes down to. You see so many examples of it at the end of the year, whether it's the Lions deciding that, hey, man, 44 can't cover anybody on the Rams, so we're just going to run everything on him. They showed that in receiver. Kello had a good year, but by the time they got to the playoffs, it was like 44 is your weak spot, so that's where we're going. L'Jarius Sneed just jamming Tyreek Hill into Cancun, in their playoff game. Like sometimes it really is just, can your dude beat the other guy when the weather's cold, or whatever. And that it's just hard to, when you go look at the other good teams like you named, the answer gets leaning towards no, depending on who they end up, matching up with. So I think it's going to be tough. They'll be like I'll put it this way: the Week 18 game will matter. Mm-hmm. I'll put it that way. I just can't guarantee that you get one after that.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, and it just speaks to, we have a tendency to assume there's this huge difference in talent and performance between the quote unquote good teams and the quote unquote bad teams. Look, man, everyone's fucking good in the NFL. The coaches are good,
right?
The players are good. Like we see upsets all the time, and so, I do think Seattle will be in the mix. I think they've got enough. I'm assuming a leap forward in coaching, which I think, like you, was the biggest weakness of this team last year. And if they can do that, I think they have the talent to win 10. That's been my prediction. But I do agree that this is a tougher schedule than they've had in a few years. Listen, dude, Mike, you know how much I love doing this with you. I can sit here for another hour chopping this up, but I know you got a lot going on. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, man, I appreciate you guys having me always. I love it, man.
Yeah, you're the best, brother. Before we let you go, where can the listeners and the viewers find more of you?
Just follow me on Twitter or X, whatever the hell, at Mike Dugar, MikeDugar. Everything's there. My author page to the Athletic, New York Times, wherever I work now these days, technically. All my stories are there. The newest podcast, Seahawks Man to Man, is always pinned to the top of my profile, so you don't have to look for it. It's just right there. I keep everything towards the top. Man, you got to scroll. I'm one-stop shop for all of my stuff, man. I'm right back at it. Training camp, I'm there pretty much every day other than day 3. I'm officiating a wedding. But other than that, I'm there every day. I think I'm doing notes every day. Me and Chris are podding consistently. We're on it, man. I love this time of year, so I'm ready for the grind. Let's get it.
As always, you can find Mike and I on social media as well. I am on Twitter at Jacson Bevins. That's Jacson. Remember that no K is okay when spelling my name. Mike is on Twitter at Mike Barwin, and the show itself is at Cigar Thoughts. You can catch full video episodes on our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts, and find the rest of our socials at cigarthoughtsnfl.com. As mentioned previously, this episode is brought to you by Balvenie Premium Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of their lineup, and we're thrilled to have them on board as a sponsor of the show. If you're watching on YouTube, you've seen me enjoying a glass of their Double Wood 12, aged in 2 different casks for a unique finish. And one of the great things about a great Scotch is how well it plays with a good cigar. So once again, we do have our own special release of cigars that you can purchase at a terrific price as a listener of the show. The release of these Cigar Thought Stogies has been successful enough for us to continue offering them for the low price of $149. That's right, only $149 for a bundle of 10. As many of you know, we partnered with one of the most prestigious cigar manufacturers in the world to release these official Cigar Thought cigars, which you can order directly from cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Just follow the link on the show page to get these easy-to-smoke stogies rolled with 13-year aged premium Dominican tobacco leaf, or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram and we'll send you the details directly. The cigars come with a Boveda humidification pack and a Mylar storage bag to make sure they stay fresh whether you have a humidor or not. Of course, you can listen to this show and read every article at fieldgoals.com. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you like the show, drop us a 5-star rating and leave a quick review. Thank you to all of y'all listening for your continued support of the show. We know you've only got so much time for podcasts in your life, and it's an honor to be a part of that for y'all. Please know that by sharing this show on social media and with your friends, you give us the juice to keep making this happen. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, onwards and upwards, my friends.